Your film didn't get rejected from a festival because it's bad. Your film got rejected because there are 50 factors that programmers have to consider before they select a film. I'm going to show you the full iceberg of factors that hold your film's fate in the balance. My name's Rudy Womack. Welcome to the channel. This is the Film Festival Guide. There are dozens of reasons other than quality that a film might get rejected or selected, and there are more than 12,000 festivals worldwide, so this is meant to be a guideline, not a hard and fast rule book. I'm dividing this iceberg into 4 levels: what filmmakers completely control, what filmmakers may control, what filmmakers usually don't control, and what filmmakers cannot control. Yes, there are factors beyond your control that can influence whether or not you get into a film festival, so stick around to the end of this video to find out what they are. Going to level 1, these are the factors that programmers can consider that filmmakers have complete control over. Let's start with the most obvious. Number 1, quality of the film. I'm talking quality of the audio, the directing, the acting, the editing, the cinematography, etc. Every single facet of the film is considered by the programmers and usually rated with a score. Here's our scorecard for anyone who's curious, and you can learn more about the programming process in this video. Link in the description. Quality is a major factor programmers consider in their decisions. 2. Film subject matter. Programmers will consider what the actual film itself is about and accept or reject it based entirely on that. Subjects that are fairly common might have a bit of a harder time standing out from the crowd. Films with a wholly unique story might have an easier time of being accepted. The subject matter of your story is going to be crucial to your film's success, not just with festival programmers, but with your audience. 3. Runtime. Long runtimes have more difficulty getting selected at festivals. Don't believe me? I have data to prove it. Link in the description. Now, I've always said that concise is king, but even by its nature, a 20-minute film is going to have a more difficult time getting selected because it's taking the place of 2 10-minute films. So yes, runtime is a major factor in programming decisions. 4. Origin of the project. You gotta shoot your film somewhere, and no matter where you film, there's going to be advantages and drawbacks. Origin of the project can be an important consideration for festivals. At the Wyoming International Film Festival, we want a good cross-section of Wyoming local films, USA-made films, and of course, international films. If we have too many or too few of a particular sort, that will impact our decisions, and we're not the only festival that considers that sort of thing when setting our slate. So choosing where to shoot your movie can change your odds of getting into a festival. 5. The rating. When I say rating, I mean rated R or rated PG-13. And yes, I know, nearly every indie film is unrated, but the content is important. Programmers aren't going to put a bloody horror movie in the middle of a kids block, nor would they put a kids film in a clearly rated R block. Unless you're LA Shorts, those guys don't care. Family-friendly versus mature can be a consideration for programmers as they're building their blocks. 6. Festival-filmmaker relationship. Good festivals put in checks and balances to make sure they're not playing favorites, but at the end of the day, people are people and they are going to want to help out their friends. I have now worked at 4 festivals, and at all of these festivals, I've noticed that programmers are much more liberal in their ratings when they have some kind of a relationship with the filmmaker. Does that seem unfair? Yes, it does. But you can make the unfair in your advantage by going out and building relationships with festivals. And for anybody who's saying that festivals shouldn't do that, well, yes, I totally agree, but as I said earlier, there are more than 12,000 film festivals on Earth. I'm here to give you good guidance and advice, and I'm telling you this is a factor for some programmers. 7. Filmmaker attendance. It's no secret that festivals want filmmakers to attend, so if the festival thinks the filmmaker might be in attendance, that can sway their programming decisions. And you can use your cover letter to put your thumb on the scale. I show you how in this video, link in the description. 8. Rights and clearances. If you don't have the correct licenses or clearances in your film, expect to be rejected. I cannot overstate this. This can be a very big deal for some programming committees. I have seen films get rejected because they didn't have the correct licenses or clearances for a song or archival footage. So make sure everything is cleared before you submit. 9. Screening format compliance. If the festival requires a DCP and you don't have a DCP, you will be rejected. Simple as that. 10. Exclusivity. Most festivals forbid films that are publicly available, either through a distributor or on an online platform like Vimeo or YouTube. This is a very big consideration for festivals of all sizes. If your film can be watched publicly, most festivals won't even consider it. Save your public uploads and distribution until after your film festival run. 11. Celebrities attached. celebrities are a big influence on the programming process. Most festivals will give favor to films that have celebrities. There are a few festivals, like Dances with Films, that actually downgrade films if they have celebrities attached. There's also a larger conversation to be had about the casting of your movie as a whole. If your film has an actor and he's a pretty big deal in his hometown, that's pretty much the same as having a local celebrity, so it might be a good idea to submit to that town's film festival. So yeah, celebrity presence can be a deciding factor in film festival selections. 12. Unusual screening requirements. For most of you, this isn't going to apply, but it should be included on this list. If screening a film has other additional considerations, such as an accompanying live event or 3D or VR or an installation, that can be a deciding factor whether or not to include or disclude a film from a festival. As an example, a few years ago, we screened a short documentary about a fire dancer. Well, she came to the festival and put on a show. It was super cool and it drew a crowd, but it also came with extra expenses, extra insurance. So yeah, additional requirements to screening a film can be a consideration for the programming team. That clears level 1, and we're going to head down to level 2 in just a moment, but before we do, please support the channel with a like and subscribe. I'm the only person on YouTube doing these deep dives into film festivals, so if you appreciate the work here, I would appreciate your support. Thank you very much. Let's drop to level 2, what filmmakers somewhat control. In this level are factors that programming teams may consider that the filmmakers themselves may have some control over. Let's start with 13, premiere status. This is a big one. Premieres can make or break your chances of getting into a festival. You can't 100% control where you premiere, but you can control in what order you submit to festivals while keeping in mind your premiere status, so submit smart. 14, alumni filmmaker. It's no secret that film festivals love to support their alumni. If you or a member of your crew are an alumni of a festival, you should consider submitting to that festival. The programming team might look at your film a little more favorably. Age of project. There are many film festivals, YOIFF included, that have a limit on how old a film can be. Most festivals have a cutoff date, as in movies older than a certain age are ineligible for consideration, so think about that before you submit. 16, controversy. Some festivals run away from controversy, others run towards it. Risk of censorship, protest, or general pushback might be a deciding factor for some festival programmers. If your movie pushes people's buttons, do a little bit more research before you submit to a festival. 17, budget level. Some festivals do in fact consider the film's budget level in their considerations. They might have a cutoff intentionally meant to keep films under a certain budget level, or vice versa, they may only consider films above a certain budget level. Check the festival's rules before you submit. 18, festival's mission or goals. Another thing programmers might consider is if the film itself aligns with the festival's missions or goals. Simply put, if your film aligns with their goals, you have a much better chance of getting in, and if your film doesn't, well, you don't. 19, marketing, press, and buzz. If the film has a lot of great press or buzz around it, programmers will take notice. Not only does this bring a lot of attention to the festival itself, it also helps the fest build a sense of prestige. Filmmakers actually have a lot more control over this than they know. If you're interested in how, let me know down in the comments below. I might make a video on it. 20, filmmaker reputation. Just like the marketing, programmers might consider the reputation of the filmmaker. Hey, festivals talk. If we hear that a particular filmmaker is rude or difficult to work with, we might consider that before we select that film. But that goes both ways. If a filmmaker has a great reputation, we might consider that before we select the film. Word to the wise, you cannot control if other people talk about you, but to a certain extent, you can control whether or not that conversation is going to be positive or negative, so do your best to influence people in a positive and uplifting way. 21, professionals versus up-and-comers. Some festival committees like to support new and up-and-coming filmmakers, while other festival committees are more exclusive and they want to cater towards professional filmmakers. So your background might be a consideration for festivals. 22, in the club. Like it, love it, or hate it, programmers are human, so yes, they are prone to playing favorites. So when I'm talking about being in the club, I'm talking about being in the same professional organization, or the same alma mater, or the same union, or same club, or any other group that the programmer and the filmmaker might have in common. And this extends beyond personal relationships. The festival itself might have a partnership with a particular organization. AWD has a partnership option that requires festivals to screen an entire block of their members' films. So being a member of the club has its benefits. Well, that wraps up level 2. Let's go deeper to level 3. Down here are things programmers consider that filmmakers by and large have little or very limited control of. Doing in-depth research before you submit to the festival is the only way filmmakers can change any of these factors in their favor. 23. Programmer preferences. Do you want your movie to be judged by AI or a computer? I certainly don't. I want it to be judged by a person. But with that comes bias. Maybe the programmers liked your movie. They found it enjoyable for reasons beyond explanation. It just gelled with them. Conversely, they didn't like your film. I'm sure everybody can name that one movie everybody likes, but for some reason it just doesn't click with them. Preference and bias is a major factor during programming. 24. Similar projects. Festivals get hundreds and sometimes thousands of submissions. Programmers may select or reject your film based on its similarity to other submissions. Story, subject, tone, genre, style are all characteristics programmers may be looking for. Having too many or too few of a specific type of film might be the reason you get selected, or it might be the reason you get rejected. 25. Filmmaker demographics. For some festivals, the demographics of the filmmaker themselves are a major point of consideration. This might be race, ethnicity, nationality, gender, age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, or other consideration. You have 2 measures of control in this regard. Either do your research before you submit to a festival or diversify your team. 26. Audience demographics. Similarly, the demographics or cultural preferences of a specific audience might be a factor of consideration before they select or reject a film. To draw an example, the Sedona International Film Festival's audience skews towards retirees and older folks. Typically, this demographic doesn't watch horror, and as a result, the festival doesn't screen too many horror films. 27. Audience expectations. Audiences might have certain expectations of the festival itself. As an example, every single year at YOIFF, we have a comedy block. Our audience expects to have a comedy block, so every year we're going to work extra hard to make sure that we have a comedy block. This absolutely affects our considerations when we're selecting films, as it does with many other festivals. Just another reason you need to do your research before you submit. 28. Issues-based versus entertainment-focused. I call this politics versus popcorn. Some movies are made to drive home a point, while others are just simple entertainment. And of course, some films do a little bit of both. Programmers may lean heavily one way or the other, or seek to strike a balance. This can be a deciding factor when selecting films. 29. Sponsors. The festival might have sponsors, affiliates, or partners that could sway the decisions during the programming process. If you are running a festival that's sponsored by McDonald's, you better not screen Super Size Me by Morgan Spurlock. You're gonna lose your sponsorship. Festivals may have to consider their sponsors or their partners when selecting films. 30. Grant requirements. Similar to sponsors, if the festival is supported by grants, there might be obligations or requirements from the grant itself that might influence the programming process. This could be including filmmakers of a certain demographic, or films covering a specific topic or theme, or even filmmakers from the organization itself. 31. Supporting alumni versus supporting new filmmakers. I swear this is not double dipping from the alumni part. Believe it or not, festivals want fresh blood and they don't want the same people year after year. Programmers might consider the balance of new faces and old familiars when selecting their films. 32. Politics. Politics come in every shape and size. There might be internal politics of the festival that influence which films programmers prefer. There might be politics or drama between the festival and the venue, or the festival and other festivals in the area. And of course, there are national and global politics as well that can be a factor when picking the slate. 33. Waiver versus blind submission. Did you get a waiver when you submitted, or did you go in blind? This can heavily impact your film's chances with programmers. Some festivals lean on waivers, while other festivals put waivers to the back of the line. 34. Risk versus safe. When the programming committee is putting together their slate, inevitably they're going to run into a dilemma. Should they screen an out-of-the-box risky film, or play it safe with a crowd-pleaser film? Maybe a festival wants a decent mix of the two, maybe they prefer one over the other. You can get a good sense of which by looking at their history, but either way, it's a factor during programming. 35. Reps, agents, management. If the festival already has a working relationship with an agent, a manager, a rep, that is going to be a consideration when they select their films. Now, having a rep doesn't immediately mean a film is going to jump the line, but it sure helps. This is a major consideration for some festivals, especially the bigger ones. 36. Trends. What's new? What's played out? A festival might want to hop on a new trend, or they might want to ditch a played out trope. Major consideration when building the program. 37. Other events at the festival. Let's say the festival is going to be hosting a cinematography workshop, and your film has killer cinematography. A festival might select it so they can play it to accompany the workshop. Other events at the festival can impact programming decisions, so it's always a good idea to do a little bit of research beforehand and see what other events the festival has going on. 38. Events in the city or region. Similar to the last one, if there are any big events in that particular city or region, that could influence the programmer's decisions whether or not to select your film. Let me give you an example. Over at YOIFF, we have the festival during peak rodeo season. Since tons of people are in town for the rodeo, we are sure to program films that appeal to that audience. Before you submit, check that festival's home city, see if there are any big events playing around the same time that you can piggyback off of. 39. Additional costs to the film or filmmaker. Festivals have limited budgets, so things like screening fees or travel stipends can be a consideration before selecting films. If money is a factor, you can bet it's going to be a talking point before they set the slate. 3 down, 1 to go. We are now at the deepest level of the iceberg, level 4. These are programming considerations that filmmakers have absolutely no control over. Starting with number 40, disagreements. Festival programmers may simply disagree on a film, and these disagreements could be irreconcilable. I've seen debates get pretty heated, and of course that can have a dramatic impact on whether or not your film is selected. Programmers may select or reject a film simply to draw a compromise. 41. Scheduling. Time is never on your side. The scheduling of each block, each day, the festival as a whole, and the entire calendar year can be a massive influence on what programmers decide when they're selecting films. 42. Budget, staff, and resources. The world runs on money, and film festivals are no exception. If the festival has financial problems, limited resources, or limited manpower, that can impact programming decisions. But this cuts both ways. A film festival might have more money than usual and decide that they want to add another day to the festival, which opens up time slots and therefore opens up programming. Either way, this is a major factor in their considerations. 43. Overall tone, theme, or vibe. If there are too many dramatic films, a festival might be looking for a comedy just to break it up. So that's good if you have a comedy film, but bad if you have a drama. Great programmers are like movie directors. They let the emotion and tone of the festival ebb and flow without going too far off course. Overall tone of the festival can be a deciding factor when the programming team gets together. 44. Past performance of similar films. The programming committee might love a particular film, but if they've had something similar in the past and it didn't perform well, that might inform their decision whether or not they decide to include it in that year's festival. How well past movies performed at the festival can be a barometer for how the festival will select their future slate. 45. Which festivals are screening which films? I've seen this go both ways. A film might get into a major festival, say Tribeca, for example. Other festivals might pounce on that film, they want to include it in their programming. Meanwhile, some festivals might decide, well, that film has kind of had its time in the limelight, let's give somebody else a shot. Festivals keep an eye on one another's programming, and that can influence their decisions when they're selecting their own films. 46. Venue requirements, limitations, preferences. I was at a film festival where a screening room was in a children's museum. Guess how many rated R films were included on that slate? None. The venue can absolutely be a factor in programming decisions. YOIFF is held at a community college, and by and large they stay out of our programming decisions, but they do appreciate it when we include some educational content. 47. Local, national, or global events and news. The COVID-19 lockdowns inspired a tsunami of pandemic-related films. Problem is, when most of these hit the film festival circuit, people were kind of burnt out with the COVID-19 pandemic. Even if you have a great film, news and events beyond your control might be a consideration for programmers. And I'm not just talking global events, it could also be local events. Let's say you've submitted to a festival and recently in that town there was a bank robbery and it's kind of traumatized the local population, and your film happens to be about bank robbers, it's probably not going to be selected. But likewise, your film could be about a hot button issue that's relevant and the festival wants to include it for that program. My point is, we live in a big wide world and there's a lot of news that might influence a programmer's decision. 48. Festival requirements and obligations. The festival themselves might have some self-imposed requirements or obligations. This might be including a certain percentage of films from a specific demographic. Another example, sometimes smaller festivals will hold a specific amount of their slate for local films. So even if you have a great film, if you're not from that locality, it might diminish your chances of getting into that festival. So it's good to keep in mind that festivals all over the world have self-imposed rules or parameters that might influence their programming decisions. 49. Attracting agents, reps, managers, or PR. It's well known that a big film is going to attract a lot of press. What's lesser known is that sometimes those films will attract more PR or agents, and that's what the festival wants. For example, if a festival has a reputation among distributors as a good place to look for new films, programmers may consider that before selecting or rejecting movies. That might influence whether or not they select your film. 50. Legal. I'm talking local, state, or federal laws. While this isn't as big of a consideration in the United States as it is elsewhere, the legality of your content can be a deciding factor for programmers. There you have it. 50 factors that programmers may consider before selecting or rejecting a film. Did I miss anything? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, please support the channel with a like and subscribe. I'll be back with more content soon, but until then, I'll see you on the circuit.